Hey family, welcome to How Love Works, where we talk about the principles for lasting love. Well family, we're still dealing with ready to love. And my question to you brothers, as well as you sisters, are you really ready to love? Well, I'm going to jump right in. Time is short. So we're still dealing with episode 8 where they all had to meet. I'm talking about the last 5 men and the last 5 women. They all had to meet their exes, the exes of the men. And it was very, very interesting to me. So interesting, I took a lot of notes. I know I'm not going to be able to get through all of these, because I like to try to keep my conversations light. I don't want to go into too much detail because I think that's a little bit irritating, not only for me, but at least also for the hearer. So I try to be cognizant of that. With that being said, I want to jump right into Tandy and Mario. And I think there's a blockbuster here that it kind of went over my head as I was watching this. I do recall when Tandy and Mario at the pool party, they had their little episode there, and I saw that Tandy kind of had a little meltdown, and it's primarily because of her history of dealing with men who, in her experience, were demanding and controlling. And it was interesting to me when I was watching that episode. I had no idea the history of Mario. I had no idea. And so when Tandy had an opportunity to visit with Mario's ex, and she found out that Mario's ex broke up with him precisely because he was, in her mind, demanding and controlling. And what was interesting, he was even kind of OCD, because if it's something about a woman or something about any situation that he doesn't like, he's very particular. It kind of coincides with the career that he has. He has to be very detail oriented if he's going to be an accountant, and that's what he is. But that's still not an excuse for being irritating. You know what I mean? And so, long story short, she broke up with Mario because he didn't like her blue fingernails, blue fingernail polish. And so the relationship was severed as a result of that. So that was interesting to me. Now she was like kind of shocked by this because she wasn't under that impression. But it's interesting to me, a woman who came from my hometown, Detroit City, and she ends up being a Detroiter herself. She comes down to, as you youngins like to call the dirty, dirty South, right? She gets down to Atlanta. When she gets down there, of all the men in Atlanta that she gets, involved with, boom, she runs into a guy who is demanding and controlling. He himself said that's something he has to work on, that he's a work in progress. So it goes back to that old adage, that thing I say all the time, like attracts like. Like attracts like. It's because you're putting out that energy, okay? And at the same time, it's not only just the energy, but it's also has to coincide with your history. It's very difficult for people to live beyond their history, especially if they're ignorant of it, and especially if they don't own it. If you're not self-aware, then you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result, which we know that's insanity, but that's what people do, right? So that's Tandy and Mario. The next couple is London and Alexis. Now, London and Alexis, one thing about London, he's been into 2 women, Divine and Alexis. But I see that he's more sexually attracted to I think, Alexis. He is, in my view, attracted sexually to Divine, but more so to Alexis. But here's the problem. I think that he is not willing to provide what she's asking for. I think she's been very upfront. She's been very consistent. She has stated very clearly that she wants to be married. She wants more than one child. She wants to be home. And she wants a man who's willing to give her that for life. He's really go ahead and sign it. And from what I've been seeing and what I've been hearing, London has not been that guy. London has just really been just playing word games, euphemisms, and just talking a whole bunch of nonsense for a 40-year-old man. See, it's my view that once a man hits that big 4-0, it's not likely, you know, there's always exceptions to the rule, but it's not likely that brother's going to jump the broom with anyone. It's not likely. And the sad part about it is that he's going to miss out on a whole nother aspect of life. And he's not going to be able to have the well-being and the meaningful part of life that he could have if he would have just decided to take that leap of faith and start that family. Because as far as societies go, we've been around the world, and they say about 1 million years or more. I'm not buying that, but that's what they say. But if we go back, that's what men and women have always needed. We needed a meaningful life. We needed to have responsibility, and the way we did that is that we would come together, lifetime partners. We would create that brand, build that brand, and then we would go ahead and franchise that brand. I'm talking in business terms, but we would send our kids out like arrows, and we would just keep it moving. But we don't do that anymore. Everybody wants pleasure and success and sex and all of that. That stuff doesn't last forever. That brother got another 5 years, another 10 years maybe, and then he'll be on the little blue pill. See how that works for him. All right. Now, that's that's Alexis in London. London is doing the same thing with Divine, but Divine's a little older. She was married before, and so she's looking at another guy right now. She's messing with Brent. I have my doubts with Brent. Brent's almost 40. He's 39, and he's been married before. He was married for 4 years, and his parents were divorced twice. And so, as far as I'm concerned, he's really a damaged individual, and he's not really self-aware himself. He doesn't really recognize what he really needs from a woman other than sex, and he doesn't know really what he's wanting to provide for a woman, maybe other than sex. And when you're dealing with a person like that, who doesn't really know what he wants to give, he doesn't know what he wants to share, he doesn't know what his real deal breakers are. He's not really sure about that. And he certainly doesn't know what his bottom line purpose is. He's kind of like drifting through this thing. And that's kind of how London's doing. He's drifting through it. When I look at all the men, they all tend to be drifting because they're not making definitive statements. They're not making definitive terms. You know, they just keep talking and talking and talking, but you know, nothing changes. So at the end of the day, my hope is that they'll make some real changes, and they'll go from there. But another one that was pretty shocking to me was Ashima and Darren. Ashima and Darren. Now, I noticed that when Darren brought up the issue that he had 2 dogs and she didn't know it, what was a bombshell to me was, why didn't she know it? You know, I thought they were like this. They had been talking for over 8 weeks off the show and during the show, and they hadn't talked about those things. See, there's 3 things I think that everybody needs to be gassed about. You know, G-A-S, gas. You need to be genuine, authentic, and sincere. That's the word I use. That's the acronym. You need to be genuine, authentic, and sincere about your deal breakers, whatever they are. I don't care if it's dogs, cats, children, skin tone, body type, size, whatever it is. You need to be, you know, genuine, authentic, and sincere about it. And you need to consistently be that way. Okay? And if you can't, then maybe you don't need to be in a relationship, right? And it's the same thing with people who now I don't want to go too far, and I'm going off the deep end. Let me stay with these 2 guys, Ashima and Darren. Now I noticed that when Ashima and Darren got together, she couldn't handle the dogs, and that turned him off. You can see he was like totally turned off. And so when they had a conversation about it later, you know, he was kind of being short with her. I could see that he was being very short with her. I mean, he wasn't raising his voice or anything, but I can see that there was no long-term destination in his mind anymore. He wasn't thinking like that anymore. Those days are over. So from what I'm seeing, the basic takeaway that I'm seeing from all of these couples is that none of them are doing the real work of talking to one another and getting to find out what is it that they really want to provide for one another. What is their number one end game? What are their deal breakers? They're not doing that. And as a result, they're all coming away a little shocked and all these bombshells. But it shouldn't be that, because they're not being who they need to be. I'm hearing a whole lot of sexual attraction talk, and I already know that doesn't work. So at the end of the day, the main thing that we need to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that in your personal relationships, you want to be genuine, authentic, and sincere, and to stay as real as you can be. That's my time. I thank you for yours. I'll catch you on the other side. God bless.